We're getting ready to bring our classic Bronco into the modern age. We're upgrading our classic Ford with Holley's accessory drive, combining vintage style with high performance power and reliability. Say goodbye to outdated V-belt systems and hello to a new sleek serpentine system, modern AC, power steering, and more. Let's jump right in. Make sure to disconnect the negative terminal on your battery. To get started with our accessory swap, we'll start by removing our radiator. Drain and responsibly dispose of the radiator fluids. We can now more readily access our V-belt accessory drive. Start by loosening and removing pulleys and brackets. We started with the alternator, removing tension from the V-belt and then removing the alternator and bracket. Next, we moved on to the water pump pulley and removed the remaining brackets. Next up was the power steering. We then moved on to the water pump and removed all the bolts. There's also a small bracket bolted onto the passenger side head that must come off as well. To remove the timing cover, remove the 10 bolts around the perimeter of the cover, making sure not to forget the 2 bolts that are underneath the oil pan. Once these are removed, we can then remove the timing cover. Be careful and clean the area around the timing cover so you don't drop any debris or dirt into the oil pan. We used a small pry bar to separate our timing cover from the block. When removing the timing cover, be careful as to not to disturb the oil pan gasket, as we will not be replacing it at this point. A new timing cover gasket is included in our Holley accessory kit. We'll use a small dab of RTV to hold the gasket in place so we can install our new Holley timing cover. I also dabbed the corners of the oil pan gasket with RTV to make sure we also get a leak-free install. Before we install our new Holley timing cover, be sure to install the front oil pan rubber seal. While making sure the gasket remains in place, carefully mount the timing cover to the engine block. Use the included fasteners and hand tighten all the timing cover bolts. When installing the timing cover, note that it includes a mechanical fuel pump mount. If you use a mechanical fuel pump, remove the cast wall first and clear sufficient space for the fuel pump lever. Next, we'll use the included alignment tool to center the timing cover to our crankshaft. By using a harmonic balancer installation tool, we can use the alignment tool to center our timing cover to the crank. The alignment tool also doubles as a front main seal install tool. Lubricate the seal and place the seal on the installation tool. Slide the tool onto the crankshaft. Using the harmonic balancer installation tool, press the seal into the timing cover. We can now snug our timing cover bolts in an X pattern and torque them to 12 foot-pounds. With our timing cover installed, we can now install our coolant inlet. It can be assembled to enter from either side, whichever works best for your application. We'll be using the left side entry. Ensure the adapter O-ring seal is still in place before torquing the M6 socket bolts to 85 inch-pounds. Using the harmonic balancer installation tool, we'll also press the damper onto the crank. Once the damper is in place, we can now bolt the damper bolt onto the crank. Torque the damper bolt to 70 to 90 foot-pounds. Next, we'll install our cartridge-style water pump. Make sure to align the water pump's indexing stud and gasket correctly before securing the pump. You'll have to spin the pulley to expose the M6 bolt holes. Torque the M6 button head bolts to 85 inch-pounds. Tighten the bolts in an X pattern and do not over-tighten. Next up is our AC compressor. AC lines are available exiting either direction, driver's side or passenger side. We opted for the driver's side exit lines. These are not included in the kit but can be purchased separately. To mount the compressor, you'll first install the M8 bolts in the AC compressor and then slide the AC compressor into the bracket. Position the second M8 bolt halfway through the rear compressor ear so that it misses the intake but rotates into the manifold slot. Finish up both bolts torqued to 18 foot-pounds. For our alternator, just slide it in the bracket and tighten down the 2 M10 bolts to 36 foot-pounds. The power steering pump simply bolts on with the 3 M8 bolts. Before mounting it, we'll attach our -6 adapter assembly onto the power steering pump and torque the M8 bolts to 18 foot-pounds and the banjo bolt to 25 foot-pounds. We'll install the pulley onto the pump shaft before we mount it. The pump shaft and pulley hub must be perfectly flush after installation for proper belt to pulley alignment. Use a pulley installation tool to properly mount the pulley. Torque the M8 bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Our Holley accessory drive offers two options for connecting the heater return line to the timing cover. You can get access from the top or bottom of the water pump. Both the plug and fitting are included in the kit. Since our Bronco has no heater, we'll go ahead and plug both heater ports. Torque the M6 screws to 85 inch-pounds. Provision for a dipstick hole is also located at the bottom of the timing cover. We will not be using it, so we'll just use a provided plug to seal it up. Torque the M5 screw to 50 inch-pounds. For our crank pulley installation, determine if you need a spacer or not. Use this handy chart for clarification. Our Bronco does require a spacer for the crank pulley. We use spacer kit part number 97-448 for our application. Torque the 3/8 bolts to 24 foot-pounds. Install the tensioner and use the indexing stud to clock it correctly. Torque down the M8 bolt to 18 foot-pounds. With all our pulleys and accessories mounted, we can now install the belt. Follow this diagram to route the belt along the pulleys. After routing the belt, use a 1/2 inch square drive wrench to pull the tensioner all the way down and work the belt on. Finish off with the water pump pulley as it provides the least resistance. Let's not forget the cosmetic covers to finish off our accessory drive. The AC compressor has a cover along with the alternator, which just pops into place. The tensioner has a nice billet cover that cleans up the accessory drive. With all our accessories mounted and ready to go, let's finish attaching the final components. For our power steering, connect the low pressure side power steering hose. We used the original hardware to attach our line. We then routed the high pressure line to the -6 adapter we installed earlier. We had to use a few adapters to get ours to mate up. Next, the final power wire goes to the positive battery terminal. Make sure this wire is at least -6 or less. Then we install the exciter wire to the alternator. This wire needs to go to a switch 12-volt source. Our heater hose goes on next. It's a tight fit, but it will give with some persuasion. Finally, we can install our radiator. Installation is reverse of removal. We can then attach our radiator hoses. Both upper and lower hoses install easily. We'll top off our radiator with some fresh antifreeze and top off our power steering fluid before our first start. Before starting the vehicle, confirm all plumbing and wiring is complete. Fluids have been added and the belt is properly fitted to all the pulleys. Our Bronco now has the ultimate blend of style, performance, and reliability thanks to Holley's accessory drive. With its automatic tensioning, modern compressor, high output alternator, this upgrade has taken our ride to the next level. Learn more about Holley's accessory drives at holley.com.